Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. Today we're replacing the screen on a Toshiba Satellite Pro C850. So let's get cracking with this. I'm going to be doing this one the long way round, which is to say I'm going to remove the display assembly. I'll explain why in a moment. But we're going to start off just by removing the covers on the screws on the front. So I'm just using a Stanley blade to dig under these. Now the problem we've got is the lower two screws here are just under the back of the laptop. Now because I use long needle nose screwdrivers, I can actually reach them. However, if you don't have needle nose screwdrivers like these available to you, you may not be able to get onto these screws. So the solution there is that we've got to remove the display assembly. In addition to that, even though I can get onto these screws, getting the bezel off out the back of this overhang is going to be a real pain in the backside with a very high risk of damaging it. So, as aforementioned, we're going to go ahead and remove the entire display assembly for good measure. This also makes the repair job a little bit more interesting than the normal display repairs. So, let's get the top cover off. This keyboard is one of those reverse affairs where it comes out from the bottom rather than the top. These always catch me out, these things. This looks dangerously like a reverse affair. Yep, it is. This is one of those uncommon laptops where the motherboard is attached to the top case instead of the bottom. So this bottom panel is going to come off rather than the top. It's not really that uncommon, it's just Toshiba don't do it very often. I screwed the DVD drive back in thinking I didn't need to take it out. This feels like something is holding it in. Yeah, I've missed a screw. Right, now we've got the back cover off, we need to undo these hinges. And we need to undo any cables going to the display assembly. So we've got our wireless antennas here. That's one. This one is going to the other side. Going to wiggle this out underneath the motherboard, and we'll just bring the display cable with it. With a bit of persuasion we can just get these out without having to remove the motherboard, I think. There we go. And now we just need to open these hinges up. So I'm just going to get my screwdriver and just pry. No, let's try the prying tool. These are surprisingly stiff when you don't have the leverage of a screen hanging off of them. And now we'll just be able to lift this base off and just wiggle it out like that. And that leaves us with just the display assembly. And there's our bezel off. Okay, so as aforementioned, it is possible to remove the bezel without taking it out, without taking the display assembly off of the laptop, but you'll notice that the bottom of it there goes right down to the base of the screen, and removing that while it's on the laptop, it is a pain in the backside. Arguably, taking the laptop apart is just as hard, but it depends on your personal preferences. So let's crack on and get this panel changed. Okay, totally not a screen cut later to when I've got the spare panel in stock. I'm now going to remove the panel from the back of the display assembly. Now when you're doing this, before you actually take the panel out, just make an observation as to where the wires are going. So in this case we've got the antenna cables, they go underneath the hinges right around the edge. It's important to observe this because sometimes you'll take them out and then you'll have trouble figuring out exactly how they go back in again. After that, this should... it's got to come out from the top. And just with a gentle wiggle. And watch out for things clinging to the back. Yeah, we'll just quickly pop out the webcam. There we go. Now with the back removed, we can turn it over and just remove the cables here. Whoop. Carefully peeling off the back. Right, the actual connector will usually be stuck down with a bit of tape, so I just use a Stanley blade and I just cut across the middle of the connector, and then we can just pull that out. And now, last item of business, we've just got to remove these screws here, and sometimes they'll be there as well. There are 4 screw holes on the side of the panel, but it's completely arbitrary. Sometimes you see 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 screws actually in the holes. So, yeah. That's all right. There's our dead panel. Now our replacement panel. Now we just fit our display cable to the back of this one. Just plug that in. Now obviously this one is not broken, so just take care around this area here where the do not touch stickers are. I mean, you can put your fingers on it, just don't apply any pressure. So I'm just pinching with my fingernails between the connector and the plug, just so I can push the connector in without actually applying any pressure on the back of the panel. And I'm just sticking this back down with its existing stickiness. Okay, right, that is ready to go in. Just feed that back in from top to bottom and just make sure that everything sits correctly. Webcams and things like this, there are usually some kind of locator pins like there that just let you know when you've got it in the correct position. And then we'll just sit these cables back down in their original locations as per our previous checks. Thankfully the antenna cables haven't fallen out of place, so that makes this bit very easy. I think that's supposed to go over the top there. There we go. Right, and we'll just put the screws back in for this fella. The giveaway for which screws you need to put back in is in, if you have a look on the metal, you will usually see indicator arrows pointing at the holes that you're supposed to put a screw back into. If there is a hole that does not have an arrow pointing to it, sorry, I'm going to have to remove my magnet, it's very much getting in the way here. If there is a screw hole with no arrow pointing at it, the chances are something is supposed to go on top of it first. So in this case, the front bezel goes over the top and then you put a screw through it. Right, and as you put your bezel on, just make sure that any cables are not getting trapped. They should just be coming out of the holes there and there comfortably. And we'll just snap this down into place. Everything should just push back in, as you can see here, but sometimes you have to just go around a couple of times just until everything is sitting correctly. And then just make sure that the hinges are properly snapped into place, like that. That one's a bit stubborn. There we go. And now we can start putting screws back in. There we go, and that's our fixed display assembly. And we're just going to lay this down like that, and then fold the hinges down on top of it, like that. Just going to turn this back around now, just so it's the same orientation that it previously was. Right, now as I put this top cover back on, I'm just going to look down through the screw holes and just make sure that those are all clear. There's nothing worse than putting one of these in place, putting in half the screws and then seeing that one of the holes you've accidentally put a screw into already. This is a classic on the hinges. Again, notice that we've got arrows here pointing to these two screw points, and I've left these holes clear because there's screws going straight through from the back cover. There we have it. All done and done. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye for now.